welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. We are part of the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I am Tyler, and with me as always is Smitty. If you go check out the pinned tweet on our Twitter or go to GoFundMe.com, you can check out our Christmas fundraiser called Rockin' Around the 412, where we raise a bunch of money to help make Christmas for a bunch of kids a great thing. It's on pinned tweet again on Twitter, and you can search it on GoFundMe.com. Also, a reminder that we do have our own personal channels on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else that you are listening to this podcast. So if you could do us a favor, go give it a follow. Give us a rating. It would be helping us out a ton. We appreciate it.
Yeah, on whatever platform, if you're able to leave like even a 5-star review, like actually type something out as well, all the better. Literally anything that you can do on any platform you're watching or listening on, please do so. Everything
and in
else,
those reviews, if you also want to ask questions as well, that works too. We will answer those questions.
Yeah, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. We will. Let's start out talking about the Pirates on this episode. Well, first things first, let's just say it. Nothing to talk about the Pens. Literally, if you go to, they made some hires. That's not something that we talk about. You can watch podcast on Fifth for Taylor to talk about those. She's going to know much more about those. Literally, the last piece of like news other than that was the Danton Heinen signing, which we talked about on last week's episode. So nothing to cover there. With the Pirates, again, not a whole lot. They were in a 7-game losing streak to sweep the Brewers. Now they've lost a couple in a row. Well, no, they won on Sunday to the Orioles. They lost series to the Orioles. They're losing 2 out of 3. And now they're on the West Coast, which, yeah, I'm always a huge fan of those games. I'm recording this right now. The game's about to start. Rodolfo Castro comes
Tuesday.
back
They
up.
lost Monday night. Great stuff.
Yeah. By the time you're watching, listening to this, they probably lost Tuesday night. Rodolfo Castro comes back up. Cal Mitchell goes down. It's one of those moves. It's like, whatever. Cal Mitchell, I guess they can get him more regular at bats at AAA. I don't know. I mean, at this point, I'm just wondering, like, why aren't all these guys up at the MLB level? I know that you can't do that and get them all there at bats, but like the one that I'm really curious about is Jack Sawinski, because like at one point it seemed like he wasn't even going to go down to AAA. Like he was just going to make that dump from double to the MLB and be able to stick here. I think that there definitely were some holes in his game that started to really creep up right before he did go down. So didn't necessarily take issue with it. I know that he's still striking out at a decent clip, but I'm surprised he's not back up yet. I'm curious to see what they do with the outfield arrangements, though, without Cal Mitchell factoring in there. And is Rodolfo Castro's primary at bats going to come at second base? Like, what does that mean for a Kevin Newman or something like that, like who was playing pretty well, I thought?
Who really cares about what it means for Kevin Newman? We don't care about Kevin Newman. As for Jack Sawinski.
Okay, good point.
As for Jack Sawinski, I mean, I guess if you want him to work on the strikeouts, AAA might be a better place to do it. But it's not like he wasn't playing consistently at the MLB level. And I guess if he wants to do it against quote-unquote easier pitching, AAA, I guess, would be easier to do it than the MLB level. But at the same time, whenever there's only like a month and a half left into the season, I really don't really care that much where he's doing it at. And it's something that he was providing sparks to the offense, even though he might have been striking out a lot. He hit a home run pretty much like every third at bat, it felt like. So if you're striking out 2 at bats, but then hitting a home run, I honestly, I'll probably take that at this point based off what we've seen from the rest of the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
kind of what we thought
confusing
Mason
one.
Martin was going to be. And he can't even be that type of player. It doesn't look like it seems like, I don't know. We've all but written off Mason Martin. At least, we're not hearing his name as much as we were even, a few months ago, even when the season was going on here, because he can't hit anything besides a fastball, it looks like. So
all is status quo in the Pirates organization. We don't have a first baseman.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's something that they definitely need to address in the offseason. I know people are going to laugh anytime that you mention the Pirates spending money, but with where they're at in this rebuild, this is like an offseason where they probably should start to do that. And I think first base is an area that they need to look at, whether it's literally spending free agency dollars or moving out a prospect for a first baseman that's right on the cusp, ready to go. Is Bly the answer at first base? I tend to think no. I mean, Michael Chavis could maybe be a platoon guy there, but you need a platoon partner, a lefty hitting partner there. There's a lot of interesting decisions that this team needs to make. But I want to turn the attention to the pitching here. to wrap up the Pirates talk, because I think it was Gary, and there was a couple other people chiming in on the conversation, but like, how many pitchers internally right now are going to be pitching for the Pirates next season? Because you have, obviously, like, Mitch Keller is a lock with what he's done. JT
Are we talking
Brubaker, I know
starters strictly, or are we talking
I'm
bullpen
sorry,
as well?
starters for the rotation. JT Brubaker, I know he hasn't looked as sharp lately, but I think he's a lock for the rotation. I mean, you have obviously Roansy Contreras, who we're to see back up here at some point, hopefully very soon. You have Zach Thompson, who's going tonight. You have Bryce Wilson as an option. Then you have like the guys that we haven't seen make their debuts yet, in Cody Bolton and Mike Burrows, who was on the show last week. Go check that out, by the way. Great interview. Who could be internal candidates. I tend to think that they would do the same thing with Burrows as like Contreras in like a best case scenario next year. Like, I don't think he'll be a full-time guy at the MLB level, but I would love to see him make his debut. But like, how many guys are in the rotation right now do you think like are part of the 2023 rotation?
Okay. You're making it a lot more broad, I feel like, when you say just 2023 rotation, because we could have like 8 or 9 guys in the 2023 rotation.
So
they're
I'm going to limit
it
though, like they go into the season.
Yeah, I'll limit it to just like opening day roster. Who's your starting 5? I'll say in organization, pretty similar to this season. I'll say they have like 4 that were in the organization already, and they bring 1 like outsider, like they did with Quintana this year.
Okay. I see, and that's the thing, is like, that's what you think. What would be your hope though? Because in my mind, I think they need to go out and get 2 guys for the rotation.
Well, my hope is that they get at least 2, because it's mostly just a bunch of bums. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. I hope Bryce Wilson is not touching the starting rotation next season. I understand he's had a few good games since he came back, but it's kind of like Mitch Keller, except it was not the hot and cold. It was just cold for a long time. I'm not going to trust that the few good games is going to make me think you're a good starting pitcher.
And you're not. What upside are you really holding out hope for? Like, what's the ceiling of a Bryce Wilson? Like, it's not what you're holding out as the ceiling
is probably like a number 4 pitcher.
Yeah. So I think that you have Keller, Brubaker, and Contreras. And then again, those guys that I mentioned that haven't touched the MLB level yet, maybe they can contribute at some point, but I don't think you can bank on that going into the season. So I think they need to add 2 external arms. But like you, and although they did trade for Zach Thompson, so I guess between him and Quintana, you could say that they added 2 even last year. But I think
that's true. But I think Zach Thompson will be in the rotation as well with those other guys you named, and so that's why I think they'll only bring in 1.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily dislike Zach Thompson, man. It's just, you can see it, like that he's that third time through the order. It's never time.
He's mid.
And
he's mid.
Yeah, I mean, he is what he is. Like, I would much rather see him as like swing man. Like, if you have to have a rotation,
average.
like,
I was gonna say he's average. He might be average. I don't know if you call it average, but he's something. He's just he is what he is. Like,
if he were the 5th starter, I could live with it. But I think in an ideal world, he's like that swing man or like a long reliever. I think he could be pretty good in that role. I'd almost want to test him out. Obviously not the same way as Will Crowe. Like, I don't think that his stuff's that nasty or anything like that as Crowe's is, but making that same type of transition, So we'll see what they do. But for me and for you, I think ideally they had 2 arms, but I would say, I think that they add 1 if I'm looking at it right now. And just the way that I think the organization will approach the offseason. I could be totally wrong. Maybe they will go out and realize that this is the time to start spending and try to get closer to that, even $80 million payroll. But
I mean, I feel like they have to eventually. I mean, I guess technically they don't have to. We've seen they definitely don't have to. But in terms of getting to a winning baseball team, LOL, you would think that over the last couple seasons, this is like the lows of lows, and you're going to want to start to build on top of that. So you're going to see like whenever they were competitive going into like 12, 13, 14, 15, like they started to up the payroll. You're going to need to start to see that to actually be competitive as well. It's not that money means everything with winning, but it does mean something. I mean, and if you're keeping all the same guys and not adding anything with money, then what are fans supposed to expect?
Right. You need to spend. It just needs to be smart spending, and
Yeah.
you got to trust that at some point the Pirates are going to be doing that here. But when we come back, we're going to talk about some spending that was done by the Pittsburgh Steelers, extending a receiver that we had hoped that they would, and a lot of people told us it wasn't going to happen. But we'll talk about that and a lot more with what's going on with training camp lately. Pads are back on, all those good things. We'll be right back. This is Around the 412 on the DT Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. And welcome back to Around the 412 on the DT Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm Smitty. That is Tyler. I know you guys can't see it because you can only see the front of the shirt. I'm wearing a Diontae Johnson shirt right now. The man got paid. I can't say that I totally saw this coming. I mean, I was hopeful. We were both hopeful. But with the numbers being thrown around there with what the rest of that draft class just got paid like all together, and with where Deontay's numbers stack up compared to that, I think that the Steelers got a nice discount here as opposed to what Diontae could have gotten had he gone to free agency next offseason. So basically, they rip up this year and do it as a new 3-year deal, making $39 million. So you look at it like that, and it's an average of $13 million a year. Now it's like $7 million this year. I think it's $18 million, something like that in that last year. And then that middle year is obviously somewhere in like that $13 million range. But to me, when you talk about the potential of this guy, which we haven't even seen yet, like we've already seen him make the Pro Bowl with Ben. And again, you know how I feel about Ben as a player, one of my favorite players of all time. Obviously, Diontae hasn't seen the same version of Ben that we got to see for most of our lives, though.
Yeah.
And the quarterback play has hampered him. He hasn't even been able to use his full route tree, like really tap in to that even middle of the field or deep route running and separation that he can create down the field. And yet he's already done what he's been able to do. I mean, the potential, the sky's the limit for this kid, in my opinion. And I'm excited to see if he can reach that, with the quarterback play here. I have no idea what that's going to be with Trubisky or Pickett or anything like that. We don't even know if it's going to be better. But what I do know is when you turn on the tape and watch this guy play, it's the stats don't tell the entire story for him. And you can see a guy that is one of the best route runners, creates separation with ease, and can find the blind spot on corners with ease amongst the best players in the league. So I'm happy he's back in Pittsburgh for at least 3 more years. And yeah, I mean, Omar Khan, man, he did it again.
Yeah, this is his first, I feel like real big task as general manager since he's been with the Steelers as GM, because he was the one that got the Minkah Fitzpatrick signing done, right? That was not Colbert, but I feel like that was going to happen. I feel like it was more of a when, not an if. I feel like this one was more of an if. Like we were more in question whether an extension with Diontae was actually going to get done, and it did, and it was at a good number, and I think it's good for both sides. I think Diontae gets paid, and he gets paid in an extension where he's not going to be too old when this contract expires, and he can look to make more money in another contract as well. And with the Steelers, they weren't going to have to overspend to get a contract done as well, and you get 3 more years of Deontay Johnson, who is now and has been realistically your number 1 receiver. And I think it's great. And according to a tweet that you put out, I mean, you're already comparing him to so many guys. According to everybody, he's better than everybody you listed in that tweet. He's the second best receiver in the NFL. No, but he is a super good one. I mean, I agree with you. Like, I would put him at least in top 15 receivers. I think you said top 12. The things you were saying in terms of route running, separation. I mean, this guy is literally always open. He's not going to get as many targets as he does being clamped down by a DB the entire time. Let's be honest. Yeah. And it's not I don't think he's going to be like the receiver where it's like, F it, Deontay's down there somewhere. It's not that case. He's just open. That's why he gets the ball so much. So yeah, I think this was great for both sides, and I'm happy that it got it done. And in typical Around the 412 fashion, it got done the day or two after we put out our episode. Of course it did. But yeah, so what's next? This was a great move on both sides. Happy it finally got done. And it's one thing, I feel like this is the last thing besides like positional battles and everything that we really had to worry about moving into the season. That was going to be making Steeler fans having a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah, I like I said last week, you really don't want this looming over because you didn't know, at the time how long Diontae would take this thing. I didn't have an issue with him holding in, but it's like at the same time we talked about it too. These other receivers are gaining chemistry with the quarterbacks. Where is it going to leave Diontae when the season starts? Is he going to be willing to play when the season starts? Like, when are the Steelers going to start finding him? Because they could have been doing that this whole time, but obviously Tomlin and the organization didn't want to ruin that relationship. I mean, yeah, it's good to have this just on the back burner now. It's not even a thought. Um, but yeah, you mentioned it's a win-win. He does get $27 million guaranteed. That's great for him. He will be able, and I mentioned this too last week, was like 3 years, 2 to 3. Well, originally it was like a 2-year extension, right? But then we saw they made it 3 years because they ripped up this year, the last year of his rookie deal, and included it in the contract. But 3 years to me was the sweet spot. Like, that's what we saw Deebo Samuel's deal for. It's what we saw Terry McLaurin. It was what we saw DK Metcalf. And the reason being, it allows these guys to hit free agency again, all before turning 30 years old, which is great. And for the Steelers, it's great because in 3 years, you're going to have to worry about, I know I'm going to say it, and I know what your thought's going to be compared to what a majority of the fan base is going to be. Najee Harris will be a free agent. The tires might be run off of him completely at that point. Don't know if he's to be able to walk. You'll figure out if Kenny Pickett is a franchise quarterback and is he going to need paid. Hopefully George Pickens is the guy that we think he's going to be, and he'll be in the same situation Diontae was in this year, like year 3 going into year 4, looking for that. I mean, Chase Claypool will have just played the last year of his contract. What's he going to look like? That Pat Freiermuth, like, everybody on offense is coming along together, and it buys time until those guys are hitting free agency, and then you have a lot more decisions to make. Obviously, the cap situation for the entire league is going to look different at that point. But 3 years to me was the sweet spot. So I love this number. I love the term. I love everything about this contract. I think it's an ideal situation for both parties. But I want to give Diontae some love. Not just for obviously his play on the field, but I think like just his recognition to the situation and everything like that. Like, I don't know if you saw his press conference or anything, like clips from his press conference after signing, but he doesn't talk a lot. But he's pretty well spoken when he does talk, and the things that he said like really resonated, talking about learning from other guys that the grass isn't always greener. I mean, he might as well have just said he learned from Le'Veon Bell, the situation. But
That's true.
and just being able to recognize the situation he's in and appreciate it. It's just nice to know that like he wants to be here, because I think a lot of people were probably questioning that through the process, but I don't know how you do after seeing the number that he signed for and then hearing what he had to say afterwards.
Exactly. I think the number that he signed for shows that he wanted to be with the Steelers. Could he have gotten more elsewhere after playing this season? Probably. I mean, what is it? 18 million a year ish. I mean, 18 to change.
That was when it was 2 years, $36 million added to the contract. But if you're looking at it like he has 3 years now on this deal, and it's a total of $39 million. So really $13 million a year is what he's making for the next 3.
Yeah, and that's that's insane. That is what Diontae is going to be making. You look at some of the guys in his draft class; they're signing like mid $20 million contracts. So the fact that he was able to do that and stay with the Steelers, he must trust what they're doing on the offense as well, and trust what the plan is for the team moving forward. Because I don't think that, as much as you want to be loyal to the team that drafted you and everything, and to the fan base, like if the situation with the team does not look good moving forward, I don't think that's something that you're going to want to be a part of. And so I think that not only did this show that he was willing to take a hometown discount and be with the Steelers, but he shows that he is going to be able to believe in what the team is moving forward with this offense, like post Ben Roethlisberger. And honestly, like he might be looking forward to post Ben Roethlisberger, if we're being completely honest, because he got a shell of Ben Roethlisberger his last few years in the league. So maybe he'll get some better, more youthful quarterback play.
Granted, though, like he was Ben's guy from a target perspective. I do think his target share is going to go down, because like a bunch of people were asking me that, like, oh, do you think he's still to be peppered the way that he was? He was second in the NFL only to Cooper Kupp in targets last year. Cooper Kupp had 191. Diontae Johnson and Devontae Adams had 169 for second place. Like, well, first off, that drop off from 1 to 2 is pretty crazy. Cooper Kupp almost 200 targets, but for Ben to target Deontay Johnson in that way, I don't know that we're going to see that from anybody else, but I think the quality of his targets could go up. So while he might only get like
The
120,
target might be more than
130,
15 yards down the field.
yeah, exactly. And I think that like you look at somebody, I mean, I think that we all kind of envision that Freiermuth will be the guy in the red zone, but with the way that Deontay Johnson can create space in short areas too, like I think the opportunity's there for the touchdown volume to go up too. But the last thing I want to say about him going back to, I keep going back to last week as reference to things that I said to see if I was vindicated or not. I said I think it would be an incredible statement to the way the Steelers feel about Deontay Johnson, knowing the way that they drafted the position to pay the guy. Like, because if people want to debate that the Steelers are the best in the league at drafting the position, that's why they don't need to pay him, but they still choose to pay him and give him a second contract. How much of a statement is that to the way that they feel about Deontay Johnson? And that's what I said last week. Like, if you don't think Deontay Johnson's that great of a player, but you think the Steelers are great at drafting receivers, well, they kind of contradict now because they decided he was good enough to pay, even though they know how to evaluate and develop amongst the best players. But enough about Deontay Johnson. We could sit here and have an entire episode talking about him. Let's get into some other training camp topics. I wanted to mention, we didn't talk about this at all prior, but Tyson Alualu coming off the PUP list is pretty big because I think that you look at, how many times do we talk about how bad the team was against the run last year? And I think if they're going to get back to even an average level, it's going to take Larry Ogunjobi being healthy. Great to see him practicing as well. And also Tyson Alualu being pretty close to the form that he was in prior to that ankle injury. So him being activated off the PUP list is big because he's got pretty close. They haven't played a preseason game yet. They've only had a couple weeks of training camp. So he's going to have relatively close to a full training camp here to get back up to speed and get it acclimated with his defense. There's a few new pieces on it. So obviously you want these guys to get as many reps together as possible. But I think an underrated part of this defense is Tyson Alualu being close to the 2020 version of himself.
Oh, for sure. And like you said, we've harped on the run defense immensely, but Tyson Alualu is a big factor into why it was so bad last year. And so to have him back, and like you were saying, with him having basically a whole training camp, I mean, we've got 3 preseason games this year. We haven't played any of them. The first one will be on Saturday. So he's able to get back and get into the swing of things. And really, we'll get to see if he still has it and it still is in form post-injury. We hope so as a Steelers defense because there's not really much in terms of depth behind the position. But as far as we are concerned, that's a great sign for the Steelers.
Yeah. And, switching gears here and going to the offensive side, to my knowledge, Monday was a really good practice for the offensive line. Like the defense was getting bullied and then heard about it from Tomlin afterwards, which if you were watching the Ramon Foster show from Tuesday, then they were talking about that. Like they asked Ramon, like, what was it like after a day like that? And he said it would be miserable the next day because the defense would come out with a chip on their shoulder and try to make life miserable. So it was just like a chess match going back and forth each day. So you want the offense to win some days, you want the defense to win some days, and go back and forth and just iron sharpens iron, right? That's the cliche. But what's interesting about this is we talked about last episode, one battle to really watch is going to be that starting left guard spot because feeling like Mitch Trubisky's got a lock on QB1 and barring something ridiculous like him being absolutely awful and throwing nothing but interceptions through the rest of camp in the preseason, left guard is really the spot where you have an opening between Kendrick Green and Kevin Dotson. Kevin Dotson dealing with an injury, and Tomlin, again, one of his cliches, one of his Tomlinisms, the best ability is availability, and Dotson really hasn't been that, for a year and a half now, really. This is a new injury that he's dealing with. I don't know the severity. It doesn't sound like it's too bad, but when you're talking about every day being meaningful, when you're going against a guy competing for a starting spot, any time missed is huge in a bad way for Kevin Dotson and in a good way for Kendrick Green. Monday, that was, a glowing performance from all accounts from the offensive line, and that's with Dan Moore at left tackle, Kendrick Green at left guard, Mason Cole at center, James Daniels at right guard, and Chukwuma Okorafor at right tackle. that very well could be the 5 that they open up with in the season opener, just based off what these last couple of days have looked like at training camp, and those 5 starting to really build something together.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not going to win the job by being injured, and that sucks to say, but I mean, that's just the way it is when it comes to these things. At the
Mhm.
NFL level, college level, high school level, you're not going to become the starter if you're not there to practice and you're not there to play. So the fact that Kevin Dotson is out and missing, and that Kendrick Green has performed, and it sounds like the offensive line has looked really good with him at that left guard spot, then it would not surprise me going forward if Kendrick Green is anticipated to be the left guard, even though Kevin Dotson has the history of playing that left guard spot. Because, like you said, even last year, he was having availability issues, and there were
Mhm.
questions of his like play going into training camp as well. And so I think that whether Kendrick Green or Kevin Dotson, I mean, I'm fine with either one, but if Kendrick Green is available and he's going to play well, then I'm fine with that too. And we talked about last week, like he prefers playing guard. And so if he's more comfortable there and it truly shows, like it sounds like it has, then perfect. That's great.
Let me bring up something to you that, again, I guess he deserves a shout out, Ramon Foster, that Ramon brought up on his latest show. Kendrick Green, he thinks, has the inside track and would have said that before even this, because the fact that he did play center last year. He said that he thinks that gives him the leg up because now he knows, even though he didn't like thrive in that role, he knows what the center needs from his guards.
Yeah,
So
that's
now
true.
Kendrick playing guard will know more of what Mason Cole's looking for from his left guard. And Kendrick can kind of, he has an upper leg there because Kevin Dotson didn't move around like Kendrick is going to.
Right.
So I just thought that was an interesting point because I hadn't
That's a
like
great
thought
point, I
about that. I
think.
hadn't heard anybody say that. Um, but you think about that, like Ramon made that transition from tackle to guard in the NFL,
Mm-hmm.
and so he knew what Al was looking for, playing side by side. And yeah, so I think Kendrick Green, as of right now, sitting here, he'd be the guy I'm penciling in to be the starting left guard when we go to Cincinnati for Week 1.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's probably because I wasn't an NFL lineman. I didn't switch spots at the NFL, and Ramon Foster did, so he knows to think of
Mhm.
those things. And so, yeah, that's a great point that he would know what the center what Mason Cole would need. And yeah, as of right now, I mean, honestly, I'm fine with either one. But if Kendrick Green is looking good and the offensive line performs better that way, and we'll see what it looks like in games. I mean, all these guys are going to get reps. But
Yeah,
I'm fine either way. Whatever the best unit is available out there, I'm good with.
yeah, and that's going back to what I said before. Like, I'm actually excited for the preseason because I think that we are going to see some reps from starters that we probably typically wouldn't see. I think going from 4 games to 3 games in the preseason really changed things. And while it might be for the worse from like roster bubble guys' perspective, because it gives fewer opportunities to those guys, I
Mm-hmm.
think from like a competition standpoint and getting to see some regulars, it's actually been a good thing. So I'm interested to see there. Another battle to watch. We know Najee Harris is going to be the starting running back, obviously, but the Steelers have had guys in and out as RB2, bringing them in for workouts and such. But a guy that's really standing out at camp is Jaylen Warren, a guy that out of Oklahoma State that I don't know a lot of people were talking about, an undrafted guy. Like I think everybody was probably like, if the Steelers don't add a running back, they'll just, it's going to be Benny Snell. Maybe because Canada can actually run his offense this year. Ben's not the offensive coordinator. We'll see Anthony McFarland. This guy won Tomlin over, I think, with some special teams drills and his work in pass pro, but he just keeps getting more and more work. Like with Najee being out for like a week now, even though, they're saying it's not too serious. He's been on the field. He looks fine doing stuff. They're just being very cautious, and I 100% back them doing that. Jaylen Warren's getting snaps with the ones, and it seems crazy to think, but he's clearly a favorite of Tomlin's and has been throughout camp. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here if this continues, because I think the RB2 spot is wide open.
It's interesting. So I didn't know this because I'm not like Smitty where I can live on Twitter and I get all the updates from training camp. But
Yeah.
went to his draft page, and also he's from Salt Lake City. But he
Nice.
went to Oklahoma State, but he's also 5'8" and 204 pounds. Now, whenever I look at that, so whenever I saw 5'8", I would think, okay, we're getting another Anthony McFarland. But the 204 pounds, I mean, that means that this
The
dude
bowling
is
ball.
thick and he is a bruiser. And that's literally what the descriptions are and over his strengths and his overview is that he's compact, burly, and ready to collide. And I feel like that is something that Tomlin himself would like, but I think Steeler fans as well would like. Just someone that's ready to go run downhill. And even though they're probably a lot bigger than him, size-wise, I mean, the dude's only 5'8", he is ready to run right through you. So that's intriguing to me.
Yeah, he had what everyone is saying is the carry of camp so far on Tuesday. He carried 4 defenders with him. It took 4 guys to bring him down after about 20 yards. So, yeah, I mean, this guy,
almost,
he's making
almost no dancing when the ball is in his hands. So he's not going to try to juke you. He's literally just going to run through you.
Yeah. I'm interested. Like, he's a guy that I want to watch, coming up here on Saturday. Like, I'm interested to see how much run he gets. And again, that's why I'm excited for the preseason for the first time in a long time. I said that last year because we had Najee and Pat and stuff. Najee obviously didn't end up playing a whole lot. But like this year with an open in quotes quarterback battle, that spot for left guard, like, can Dodson get back for Saturday's game? I don't know. RB2 spot. Some of the cornerback battles are going to be interesting too, because like James Pierre, who we had high hopes for last year, I think was thrown into way too big of a position too quick. He's had a really good camp. Some of the middle linebacker battles too, like beyond even Miles Jack, I'll say, just behind him, because Spillane is really pushing Devin Bush in training camp for playing time. So there's a lot of battles, man. Maybe not for starting jobs, but for second string and still like guys that are be playing a decent bit.
Yeah. So as someone that follows the play-by-play from all the guys on Twitter giving the updates, has Kenny Pickett had a better week moving forward into training camp?
Yeah, I think once they ditched the shorts and actually put on some pads, I think that you saw some strides. But these last 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, I think were really good. And I'll say the same though for Trubisky. And it's not like Mason Rudolph's been bad. I don't think he's thrown a pick yet in training camp. So they're all kind of like taking steps forward, in my opinion. I think Rudolph started out as the best, but the other two have definitely like gained traction. And I think like the other thing that people need to take into account with all of this is it's like Trubisky came into a new system going against one of the better defenses in the NFL, like it with the ones. Like, it's not like he was going against that same level of competition. Like he was out there against the ones. And then obviously Rudolph going against 2s, Pickett against 3s. And also on the reverse side of that, playing with third string receivers and stuff. So like guys dropping the ball, not running the right routes. Just, you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt. But to answer your question, I'm going on a little bit of a ramble session here. To answer your question, Kenny Pickett has definitely settled in. And I think he's gotten better literally every day. Like, that's such a cliche to just say, oh, day by day, but legitimately.
Well, I did see somebody, and I forgive me, whoever tweeted it, I don't remember who, but somebody said that Kenny Pickett, out of the quarterbacks, has been the most improved since the start of training camp. Mitch Trubisky has had the highest of highs in training camp.
Yeah.
And
this was Nick Faraball's tweet, I believe.
Okay. And then Mason Rudolph was the most consistent throughout training camp.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's accurate, and that's kind of what I've heard from everybody, and Nick's obviously there, and in my opinion, one of the best covering the team.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of coincides with everything that I've seen too. But again, it just, to me, Mason definitely has been the most consistent, but there's no ceiling there. Like, he is what he is. And I honestly think, like, credit to him. There's not many guys that are like outworking him. Like, you ask anybody there, like, he's always looking to stay after practice and throw extra balls. He's out on the field early throwing footballs. He throws footballs more than anybody in the off season. Like, it's not for a lack of work, the reason that he's, not been an established starter in the league. But I'll be very surprised if it's somebody other than Mitch Trubisky as the quarterback when we go to Cincinnati.
Hey, we get to watch those quarterbacks this weekend as the first training camp or first preseason game rolls around.
Yeah.
Against
how do you think they're going to, I saw this on Twitter, how do you think they're going to split the time up for the quarterbacks? Like, one, do you think Mitch plays at all? And then based off that, like, how do you think it trickles down?
I mean, I think you have to have all three play at all. If one's not going to play, I feel like that is because you're already leaning towards them for the starting spot. And I don't think that the Steelers are going to really show their hand yet in that. And I don't even think they have that decided fully, even though they're probably anticipating Mitch to be the starter. I don't think they would treat it like just like a Ben scenario where it's like, okay, we already have our starter. He's not going to play in this game. I still think all three will probably play. But as far as snaps go, or like playtime goes, I would think that Mitch and Mason would probably get the most in this first game. And I would say,
okay.
Yeah. And I think that I don't really know how to divvy it up. Like maybe between like the first like 3 quarters, they each play about half of that time. And then Kenny gets the last quarter or something. I don't know. I still feel like all 3 of them are going to play. I just don't think they're that far along that they're in the quarterback battle that they're ready to just like not play one of them in a preseason game, especially since you only have the 3 of them as well instead of just 4 of them. So I think that they're going to play all 3. I still think that Mitch and Mason, at least in the first game, will get majority of the reps over Kenny. And that might change in game 2. But for the first game, I think that those 2 would be sharing most of the snaps.
I'm curious about that then, because I actually think I think they'll use the second preseason game or the third one. I'm trying to, because last year was different because they also played in the Hall of Fame game, so they still had 4.
Yeah,
like they would have in past years. But I think either the second or third game will be the dress rehearsal. I'm expecting for Saturday it to be like a couple drives of Mitch. Mason finishes the first quarter, maybe plays a drive or 2 in the second. Then we see Kenny into the fourth quarter, and then Oladokin in the fourth for most of the fourth.
maybe. I also forgot that dude existed, to be completely honest with you. I didn't even think about him getting playing time.
He's not really like doing much at training camp. Like he's not getting reps really. So
right.
It's just weird. Like I think that we know like he's going to be on the practice squad and just like be there to emulate like the mobile guys that they're going to be facing.
Yeah.
But it's just odd that he's really not like taking
Josh
part
Dobbs
in anything. Yeah, but even Dobbs, like he would be doing stuff at training camp. I guess it's because like Ben would have his time off and stuff. So there were times where Dobbs would be like QB2 even.
Right.
So yeah, that's the difference. But yeah, they play a game. So the next time that we talk, we're going to be talking about an actual football game being played by the Steelers. So wow, it's coming quick.
Yep,
Got
I'm
less
looking
than a month
forward
till the
to
NFL season kicks off in general.
Looking forward
Bills
to it.
and Rams. As Tyler mentioned at the beginning of the episode, our pinned tweet on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, you have to go search Rockin' Around the 412 on GoFundMe, or even if you just type that in on Google, Rockin' Around the 412, I'm sure that it will come up on GoFundMe. But it's our yearly Christmas mission. We kicked it off at the beginning of last month. We raise money to go directly to families in our area, provide Christmas in its entirety, along with groceries to cook a holiday meal. So we got that going right now. It's going to run until 2 weeks until Christmas. Go ahead.
So I just looked. If you search Rockin' Around the 412 into Google, the first link that comes up will be our Twitter, which you could click on and go to the pinned tweet. The second link that will come up is the GoFundMe, and it says Fundraiser by Zachary Smith, Rockin' Around the 412 year 5.
Okay. And then is the third one the Beaver County Times article from last year?
No, third one is our Instagram. Fourth one is Apple Podcast. Sixth one is the Beaver County Times article.
Okay. All right. Well, there it is. Shout out to Josh Carney once again. But we got that going on. We're trying to give away Steelers tickets. So get us to 17,000 followers on Twitter, and we'll give somebody Ravens Steelers tickets at not Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium. Sorry.
This is also showing the Rockin' Around the 412 announcement from last year when you had a mustache. That was a great look.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm never going to get used to Heinz Field not being
Acrisure Stadium
anymore, by the way. Yeah. And what else? Oh, anywhere that you're watching or listening, like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review. Leave us a rating. Do all that stuff. Until next week, we'll be ready to talk to you guys about that big preseason win on Saturday and who shined. Until then, for Smitty, for Tyler, this is Around the 412 on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.